Good morning, Jeffrey. How are you?
Great, Stephen. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Let's talk a little bit about who you are. You've played a lot of roles in the tech industry over the last 20 years. You've been a founder, you've been a director of engineering at established scaled companies like Splunk, you've worked at startups, you've led product at times, you've led platform teams and infrastructure teams, and now you're over at Expel. Um, what brought you to Expel? And tell us a little bit about what you're working on now.
First of all, just to acknowledge what you said is true. When I'm always like, whenever I join a new company, I have to introduce myself. It's always a little like, who even am I and what do I even do? And I think like as I've gotten older, I've just come to accept that a big part of why my CV or my resume looks weird is because of ADHD. And that is, I think a superpower. And I don't think I'm the only neurodivergent person in the tech industry. What do you think?
I've met plenty of folks with neurodivergence in the tech industry.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits of attentional things is like you've got a really broad perspective now as a byproduct of working in all these different domains, different stages of companies. Like the perspective that affords, I think, is pretty incredible and is needed now when like AI is changing things so quickly. It's like kind of back to first principles and fundamentals and like how do you reason through this transformational wave that we're all going through? So to your point, it like can be a superpower.
Yeah, I think it has been both for me for sure. And I've certainly like felt fortunate in my career to do so many different things and meet so many interesting and different people. But I'm definitely like not a typical sort of person in the industry. I came to Expel to answer your question primarily because I loved the people. I candidly had like two sort of false starts between the previous role at Lattice and Expel, where I said, "Hey, I'm going to optimize for different things." Um, and primarily those were, maybe outcome potential or, things. And like in my gut, I had these like, oh, is this the right thing? Well, I'm just going to lean into it and try it out. And so the first one of those was just a place that was not a strong culture fit. I'm not going to talk about it. That's not even on my LinkedIn. And the second one was a Series A startup, which I loved the people, loved the mission, and actually was having a lot of fun. But I found myself like 8 months in, having worked like 70 to 80-hour weeks the entire time, being like, yeah, I think my gut was right that Series A is probably not the right stage for me with two young kids at home. And so I took the summer off, kind of stepped away, and really just like stopped even looking and just tried to be for a minute. And Expel reached out, and I really hit it off with the founders and the leadership team. And it really felt like, oh, this is a place that is that believes that their success is tied to the people at the company. And if you like look through my career at the places where I have stayed the longest, it tends to be those types of places where it is a you could say people first or whatever. And what that means in the AI world is maybe an interesting discussion point. But I think primarily it is like I love the people I work with. And when I love the people I work with and I enjoy the nature of the work, time just disappears for me and I'm like having a blast. And so I feel really fortunate to be at Expel with the team and everything. And I'm the VP of engineering here. So our platform is managed detection and response and cybersecurity. So the easiest way to think about it for folks who are not familiar with cybersecurity is there's all these things that are happening on all of these SaaS platforms and devices and endpoints, and it's just a bunch of noise. And like we try and reduce that to signal that needs to be paid attention to by somebody's security operations team or center. A lot of people just completely outsource their security operations to us. Some people it's more of a hybrid mode where like we augment theirs. But fundamentally, we are delivering security outcomes by finding the signal in the noise, which is a very AI shaped problem. So we're in a pretty good position. And, like the entire tech industry, there's significant headwinds and disruption and change right now. So it is complex and there's lots of pressure, but I'm having fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've seen like the recent headlines about Mythos and the new threat vectors that all of these AI tools can generate as well. So, um, security tech is as important as ever, even more important than ever to help defend against bad actors who now have even more powerful tools to try and infiltrate systems. As you're looking at, I guess, the AI dynamic as both a tailwind and a headwind for Expel, talk me through some of the dynamics, cybersecurity dynamics that you're facing as you're, building the product and
Yeah.
like thinking through how AI is incorporated into your product and how it makes it better, and also some of the headwinds that you face with AI development on the scene.
Yeah, this is a really good question. I'll like tackle it from both sides. So if you think about the bad actors or the people who are trying to infiltrate systems or do harm, we like to think of ourselves at Expel as the good guys, and we are actually trying to prevent, bad things from happening from bad actors. What AI does for the bad actors is it accelerates everything. They can just like launch a bunch of things in parallel. They don't have to open their hex editors anymore to find the problems in the software. They can just like throw the agent at it and be like, tell me all the vulnerabilities here, as we saw with the announcement of Mythos. But people have been doing that even before Mythos, and it's happening. So now like we're being attacked, companies are being attacked at AI speed. And so you would think, oh, the answer is we'll just like, put AI as the defender and then we can like meet them at AI speed. But what people don't realize is like, at Expel, for example, we ingest hundreds of billions of events every day. Um, it's millions per minute. It's like how we can't put an LLM in front
Yeah,
of
the
every event. It's
latency
just
is way too high. Yeah, for
the
an
latency is
LLM to
way too high.
process.
And by the way,
Yeah.
that like even if some tokens are subsidized now, it would not be, you may as well just like have a human trying to read every other event. It's just like it's not reasonable. So then the question is, well, where in our data pipeline is this noise to signal funnel essentially? There are other problems that are shaped like this. It's not just security problems. So it's like, well, where in that funnel do you slot in the agents to do the parts that they can do well? And we are in the midst of sorting that. If you look at Expel historically, it's one of the interesting things is as we've increased the number of customers, our SOC, the people who are the humans who are actually like investigating all the incidents and alerts and things that we send to them through that signal, has not grown by anywhere near as much. And you're like, why are you guys cheapskates? And it's like, well, yeah, but no, like the reason why is because we've automated everything. So even pre-LLM, our entire system was powered by ML models. So like at every stage of this funnel, we've got custom models trained that are doing all kinds of things in automation, and we have like workflow automation that's happening behind the scenes. And so the question is like, okay, now those humans that we believe will, especially for the enterprise customers, always need to be there, how can we like offload some of the work for them that is more mechanical, which the agents are really good at? Things like triage is a good example. So it's like, okay, well, we've reduced all the noise to this much signal, but even within that signal, like there's a lot of it that's still gonna be like benign, because you can't really have false negatives. Like false positives are okay, false negatives are not. But triage can really help us reduce the false positives. So that's the thing that we are playing with the most aggressively right now. The other places that are interesting is for AI to plug in are more like behind the scenes. So instead of like inspecting the alerts themselves as they're coming in, we write detections. So a detection is like, oh, there's an event that's shaped like this, and here's what the fields look like, and here's what the message looks like. Uh, and for historically, we write those by hand much of the time. Well, with LLMs, we can actually like look at a whole set of events and be like, hey, these events here were not benign. Write us a detection that would prevent these in the future. And like LLMs are really good at like finding those patterns in that data so we can generate new detections. So where it used to be like it would take us a few hours to write and deploy a new detection in production, we can get that down to minutes, which is really, really exciting for us. And then the one that I'm sure we'll get into maybe in a little more detail is, the software engineering discipline itself. So yeah, there's the detections that we write. There's all the security shaped activities that we do. And we have very technical people doing that in our security operations center, as well as in our sort of detection engineering function. But then there's like the platform, which is basically these giant data pipelines and orchestration platforms for the most part. And we can now move at AI speed building those things out. One of the things that I've been framing this as for people, I don't know if this resonates with you, Stephen, you talk to a lot of people, is there's like this notion of lowering the floor and raising the ceiling. So there's always this set of things that, oh, I do this thing, it takes me 4 minutes every day. It would take me 3.5 hours to build a script to automate it, so I'm just not gonna do it. Well, guess what? Now you are gonna do it. Like the floor, like the number of things you're willing to automate has just like increased because the floor has lowered, because the AI can actually build these scripts that would take us an annoying amount of time as humans to write, but the AI can write them very, very quickly. So we're like automating more of the things that are in our way of velocity. So that's like the lowering the
Yeah.
floor piece. And then there's the raising the ceiling piece where it's like, I'll give an example that's not from work. And this is maybe an interesting one. My daughter has synesthesia, which is when she hears sound or music, she sees color. It's a subset of synesthesia. She has chromesthesia. Um, and she's like, Daddy, I want to make a video to show my friends what this is like. And I was like, no, you don't. You want to make an app. And so like we coded up an app in a few hours. It's in the iOS App Store. You can see it. It's free, and you can play with it. And I know nothing about signal processing, and I know nothing about like visualization of things with like GL or anything like that. But because I have the AI that does, and I know enough about software, I can actually like build this app with her. And so like the ceiling has been raised for me, even though I'm not necessarily a professional software engineer at this point. Like I will attempt things that I never would have attempted before. And I think a
Right.
lot of our engineers are feeling that too. It's like, oh, well, that's too hard or that's impossible. And it's not like, well, is it actually? And how much are we willing to sort of cede the expertise of that stuff to the machines is like the ever, growing question. But I think the floor is being lowered, the ceiling is being raised, and then the velocity is increasing. Um, the things I'm less sure about are like, what does that mean for the quality and maintainability of the platform long term? And I don't think anybody knows. And anybody who says that they
Yeah.
do, we're too early in the innings to know that.
Yeah, the lowering the floor thing, there's a lot of discussion about AI taking away software jobs, but I've always felt like there is a constraint on how much software can be produced relative to how much software the world needs. And
Yeah,
there's all these niche market opportunities, niche domains that software would benefit, but the cost of producing a solution was always so high that it wouldn't like clear a hurdle rate. It wasn't worth the effort. And now I think with that effort being reduced and the floor lowering, as you say, there's more incentive for people to go after this like long tail of software projects that otherwise would have been, unfundable because you needed to hire a software engineer and put so many hours into it before. So really interesting dynamic. It's like I think there is an opportunity for actual net creation of more work if we look at it through that lens. On the raising the ceiling thing, I think the dialogue I hear is often, well, now it's empowering people to step beyond their subject matter expertise. You have engineers being pseudo designers, you have product managers shipping prototype code, you have everyone stepping into each other's arena because they are bolstered by the confidence of the expertise of these models that, oh, well, I can do it, and I think there are these unknowns around like the second order effects of that, the maintainability, what happens when things go wrong. I'm sure you think about this in the security world because security is uniquely high stakes
yeah,
for shipping AI code and customer trust. And security is a very difficult arena because it's like everything is good until something goes horribly wrong. The absence of things going horribly wrong is success. So I'm curious, yeah, to talk a little bit about like AI in the software engineering discipline and how you're thinking about that in your environment, specifically around like the benefits of the velocity gains versus the risks of quality issues, and like the customer trust that could be, degraded there. Yeah, I'd love to just hear a little bit about how you're thinking about that at Expel and like the kind of guardrails you're trying to invest in.
it's I think guardrails is like exactly the word that I'll take as the jumping off point. Um, so let's assume that the models continue to develop apace and continue to get better and better. Um, and are just taking over more and more of the like, oh, we're going to build this solution. The hard part then becomes like, well, I didn't write it. So like my confidence in whether it's actually doing what I wanted without reviewing every line of code, which at the scale that AI is generating code doesn't seem realistic. So my best guess at where we're headed is, and this is interesting because I've been in the industry for 30 plus years and I've been in leadership for 20 plus years. And I've been building stuff for 40 plus years. So I've watched over the years the sort of pendulum swing from like, oh, quality assurance or quality engineering is like primary when like pre-internet days where like shipping package software was like really expensive. Like there was like a very, very strong like quality assurance was like a big discipline. And then as we moved more toward like continuous deployment on the internet, it was like, okay, engineers are going to test their own code and we're going to like shrink the role of quality engineering to be one where it's like they're more an enabling team. They sort of teach people how to think about quality, and maybe they do some quality automation and testing or things like that. I actually think the pendulum is going to swing back, and not necessarily it's that it's going to be the same engineers who have called themselves quality engineers, but I think all engineers are going to start to their role is going to become how can I prove to myself that this thing is doing what I want it to do? So the code that like the engineers will write or be more involved in is the code that validates the system, and the AIs will actually like build the system. There's some really wild thinking on this. I think you and I spoke once recently about Strong DM, the software factory. They have some
Yeah.
really wild ideas out there that people are exploring. And one of them was like the digital twin. It's like, oh well, we're a company that like does a lot with um, Microsoft Entra, Active Directory, whatever, or Okta. We can't like hammer our production Okta, and also we don't have like kind of we'll get rate limited and all this stuff. So it's like they build a digital twin that just like fully mocks Okta or something, and it's like, is that realistic? Who maintains that thing? And so I have more questions than answers, but I do think the shift of like the expertise for engineering is going to be like, well, I actually do know what this thing's supposed to do. So I'm going to like coerce the model into doing it. I'm going to spend a lot of time um, specking exactly what I want and iterating ahead of time, which is maybe
Hmm.
like shifting us away from agile and back toward waterfall, which is interesting. It's just that the waterfall is faster.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then we're going to be like, okay, well, now that that thing's built, or while that thing's being built, how am I going to validate that the thing is really doing what I want? Where I think all the danger is that some people are like, well, I'll just write it all over here, and then I'll just have the AI write all the tests and the validation, and it's just like, well, sure, everything's green. But it's like, well, is it though? Like, I don't know. So I think there's something there that we haven't figured out yet, or I haven't at least. Maybe if you
Yeah.
have something, please reach out and tell me.
No, I mean, I think the work shifting to the ends instead of the middle uh, is what I'm seeing across a number of the companies that we're working with, and like some of the more innovative, what I'll call AI native, AI led development shops, they're investing in things like on every pull request, you spin up an ephemeral environment, you patch that PR, you create like an environment in which you can actually click and play with the change to validate the functional correctness. Maybe you run some automated tests in that ephemeral environment and so forth. Because like I think back to the days that I was a tech lead, when I would get a pull request, the first thing I would do is like take the change, patch it in my dev environment, and like look for functional correctness before I would even bother reviewing the code. Because why am I going to spend all this time reviewing the code if there's like obvious bugs that I could just kind of QA, send back to the engineer and say, hey, fix this, right? Before going through
Yeah,
that onerous process. There are now organizations who are starting to say, how do we stop code reviewing everything? Some organizations evolving their SOC 2 controls, their compliance controls to say human review isn't required on every change, things like that. So that's very much the world we're moving towards is like, what is the new validation infrastructure that gives you confidence without having to read every single line of code? So yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of that what does QA look like in an AI native world is like a really interesting question right now.
yeah. And I don't know what you're seeing or what you're hearing from other leaders, but like you sort of said, like, oh yeah, we're moving to a world where we're not going to review every line of code. Like that is making, I'll just say it, like the most senior engineers at Expel are very, very uncomfortable with letting things go to production without a thorough human review. So we are still in the mode, especially as a security company, it's just like we cannot miss. Like false negatives are not okay.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's existential for us. So it's like we just can't. Downtime
No, I
is
mean that
necessary.
makes sense. Let some of the kind of product teams that are move fast and break things, let them pave the road and you can follow, right? It's like you want to use innovation tokens in a sensible way for your business, and sometimes you want to follow other people. And this might be one of those where like you follow other people after the patterns get established, right? Because the stakes are too high for Expel.
Yeah. One of the things, a guy that I've worked with a bunch of times, is the fourth time I've recruited him to a company. He doesn't come from a security background, but he's like working on some of our data pipelines, and we have all these detections that run in these pipelines. And I was like, but we're gonna have to figure out if we build this new pipeline, we're gonna have to figure out how to migrate all these old detections. And he was just like, why? And I was like, what do you mean why, dude? We have to detect all the things. And he's like, but all you really care about is that like the efficacy is greater than or equal to at the bottom of the funnel. You don't care if the exact detections run, right? And I was like, oh yeah, that's correct. But it like took somebody like from outside the world to be like, look, and he's thinking of it in the right way. It's like, well, look, all we really care about is the outcome. Let's not worry about what's happening in the middle. Let's make sure we deliver the customer outcome that's wanted. And so in the process of this big project that they're doing, they have like sort of decomposed all of these detections and are figuring out how to migrate them to the new thing. And it's not one to one at all, but they have a test harness that proves that the efficacy is greater than equal. I think that's the world we're moving toward, is like, how can we get confidence? And I think some of the sort of like best, most forward-thinking engineers are already there, even if there aren't like playbooks yet for all of us to adopt. So I think
Yeah,
you're right that the sort of CRUD apps and the more simple things will pave some roads here. How applicable they are to like what Expel does, which is basically massive automation, data flow, and orchestration, is we may not be able to borrow much there. So we have to
sure.
like think about it ourselves a little bit. But so far, we're still in the mode now on our journey of like the things are not going to go to production without a human review. And so we are noticing a pile up of pull requests and things like that. And I think all teams are feeling that.
I mean, AI writes more code, and it creates more of a bottleneck on code review and things like that. So, actually, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, PR volume is up. 2 week sprints feel like a thing of the past, right? I mean, it was all agile 2 years ago, 3 years ago. That was like the industry standard, 2 week sprints. But now they feel irrelevant. It feels like spending an hour in a backlog refinement meeting is not a good use of time. There's like a generation of engineering managers who have been trained on a certain set of processes that feel increasingly irrelevant. Curious to hear like what kind of experiments you're running, if you're finding any new processes, or vignettes of engineers who are doing interesting things that you think are more matched for this like new era of development.
Yeah, I love this question. I'll start with one experiment that I sort of led. I When I got here, there were a lot of, you know, people, especially the outside of EPD, engineering product design, saying like, "Hey, how can we get higher velocity?" And like I came into the company with people wanting that. Well, when is that not wanted? Um, and so I was like, in my interview process, I was like, well, how much AI are you using? And this was like back in the summer of 2025, which was before that watershed moment in December. But I was already, that summer, since I was off, I was like learning what the capabilities of
You're
things
becoming
were.
AI build. Yeah, because you had time
Yeah.
to tinker. Yeah.
So I was like, look, this is low hanging fruit velocity we can claim. But I noticed when I joined, there was like a wide range of some people that were sort of at the vanguard of like, hey, I use AI every day, and this is what it looks like for how I use it. And there were some people that were like very, very skeptical. And so I took a smattering of the senior most people across that spectrum, and I formed this temporary ephemeral group that I called the AI coding crew. And I just sort of like in my skip levels would just be talking to ICs. And I'm like, hey, do you want to be part of this experiment I'm running? And some people are like, oh, sure, yeah. But I want to warn you that like I think this is all BS. Like it's not gonna, it's not gonna. I was like, okay, that's great. I want that represented here. So we pulled folks in. It was a little fewer than 10 folks, like eight-ish people. Think sort of staff to principal level people for the most part. And I pulled them together for a 1 month experiment. I said, hey, for the next 1 month, I want you to stop writing code. And they were all like, what? I was like, I said, I want you to stop writing code. I don't want you to stop shipping code. I want you to just let the agent write the code. You can review it, you can like spec it, you can iterate, and then of course, being engineers, they're like, well, what if there's a one character change in one file? I'm like, look, guys, it's the spirit of the message, not the letter of the message. If it's a one character
Sure, sure,
change, don't
sure.
burn the tokens for that, whatever. But you get the idea. Like, really, just resist the urge, and then we're going to regroup in 2 weeks, and we're just going to say, hey, how did it go? And if you need air cover with your manager, let me know. I'll talk to them to do this. And so everybody's like, okay. And then we met 2 weeks later, and I expected mixed results. But instead, what I found was everybody was just like, oh wow, I have no idea how far these things have come.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, what did we learn? And people sort of like shared their
When
approaches.
when was this, timing wise?
This was probably, uh, I think it was right around like December. So it was
Yeah,
after
okay,
the November
okay.
drop.
Like after 4.6 or four
Yeah.
five.
I was like, great. Well, what did you do to make it work? And we had a couple people that were like, he's like, one guy was like, well, I wanted to see if I could be faster. And it's a well-worn path that I've gone down a bunch of times. It's a fairly mechanical thing. And I just raced the AI, not even close. Like the AI destroyed me. And it wasn't even that complicated what I was doing. And he's just like, now I just spend all of my time trying to get clear on what I'm building with the AI's help. So there's a lot of iteration on the spec, the plan, whatever it is. And I think there's all kinds of frameworks that people have come up with. There's a popular one internally at Expel is GSD, which stands for
Mm-hmm.
get stuff, but not stuff
Mm-hmm.
done. And that's a very popular one. Just like it's like a methodology more than a piece of technology, although there are some skills and things that you can plug into the agent.
There's like spec kit
Their
and
spec kit, and some of them are heavier weight, some of them are lighter weight. But there is
mhm.
this general theme that emerged in that first 2 weeks of like, I have to spend more time you know, getting clear on what it is that I actually am building. What is the gap between like these requirements that I know and like where the rubber meets the road? And like I'm spending most of my time there. And the more time I spend there, the better the agent does. And so that was
Yep.
a general learning. And then I was like, okay, let's keep going for another 2 weeks. We regrouped 2 weeks later, and I was like, hey, what if I told you, by the way, everybody was using Claude Code for the record. I was like, what if I told you you couldn't use Claude Code anymore? And people were like out of my cold dead hands. Like, no way would I go back to doing things the old way, which was interesting, including the skeptics people. And I was like, great. Well, at the next Eng All Hands, can you all put some slides together and present? Because I can tell you, me standing up in front of all of engineering being like, you have to use AI isn't going to work. But because you're all the respected people, if you stand up and be like, we just did this, what do you say? It's going to go over much better. And that thing kind of really kicked off AI adoption within engineering at Expel. It was a huge success. And we're seeing one of the EMs reached out to me right away. He's like, what exactly did you do for this experiment? I want to do the same thing on my team. And I was like, I didn't do a whole lot, man. I just told
Yeah,
people to
yeah.
stop writing
Well, air
code.
cover, you talk about the watershed moment in December, like November, December when 4.5 came out. Like, I think one of the reasons that it was such a watershed moment was because you had these busy executive people and managers who went into the holidays and actually had time to tinker.
Yeah.
And I think you say you didn't do much, but I think creating space for people to experiment and give it a fresh look is actually really important because if you've got a deadline, you're staring down a delivery deadline. Are you going to do something uncertain that's going to require new learning and add risk to the timeline? Or are you going to do it the way that you know how to do, right? You're going to do it the way you know how to do.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that mandate and that space is actually really powerful. Like, whether it's a hackathon or it's a working group like you did, or it's something else, like you have to give people space to try and fail and learn in order to embrace a new way of doing things. So,
Yeah. You
yeah.
said hackathon, by the way. That's the other thing that we did. We have them quarterly at Expel. They're called exploratory time. And
Nice.
and they happen every quarter. And this last one that we did, we changed the format a little bit, but leading into the hackathon, the AI coding crew was doing enablement sessions on how to use Claude Code and how to get
Yeah.
people up and running so that they could feel a lot of space and freedom in that in their 3 days. So it's just like in that 3 days to really like go for it and really try. And not only was it the best hackathon we ever had, but like the scope of what people were able to do in the 3 days dramatically increased. And some of those things have now made their way into production. And so then in the last engineering manager all hands, I said, look, folks, I know the sort of like dogma in the religion has been like agile, and I know that like quarterly planning and agile and sprints and retros. And I was like, I don't know if that's right anymore. And I actually don't know what is right. And if you're looking to me to figure that out, I think you're going to be really disappointed because I'm going to be honest, I just don't know what to do. But I want you all to experiment and share with each other what is and isn't working. And we're like, I would say at the beginning stages of that. So
Very
what
cool.
I don't have for you is like a report on, well, this Leaf Node team did this thing and it's
Sure.
working really well. Um, but what I can tell you is, especially because we have some of the data in Span, you can actually see which teams are more AI native, and you can see the impacts on velocity and the impacts on quality. And what we're noticing in our data, at least, is velocity is way higher, and the bugs are higher, but not by the same amount. And like more code, more bugs, but like the bugs are increasing at a slower rate than the number of things we're shipping, which is not what I expected. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, and if you can fix the bugs quickly too, a slightly elevated bug rate is a
Or
good trade-off to make,
or
as long
automated.
as
Like
it's
some
not.
people, one
Yeah.
experiment people are running, I don't know how well it's working, is they just have Claude in GitHub. So well they have it like looking at the Jira bug when it's filed, and then they have it just resolve it. They try and
Yeah.
fix it and they submit a PR in GitHub, but that's just like generating more PRs. So people are like, this isn't right. And I'm like, well, is it if the bug gets fixed? I don't know, guys. Like we need to figure
Yeah.
this out.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing some stories with us. I think we're coming up on time, but I have one more question. It's very very timely because I think it's like out in the ether right now. Token maxing. It seems like this thing a lot of engineering leaders have been using to try and incentivize and promote adoption and usage. Any hot takes on the token maxing theme?
Yeah, token maxing is dumb. And uh, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Goodhart's law,
Hmm.
which is if you're not familiar with it and you're tuning in here, I forget exactly how he phrased it, but it's something like anything that you use to measure, if you use that as a target, it fails to be a good measure. And I think like tools like Span wrestle with this question, like how can we like present metrics that are hinting at like what's going on without having people want to game them? And I think token maxing is like the most gameable thing ever. Like if you want me to burn tokens, I can burn tokens. I can burn all the tokens. And I've heard like in OpenAI, somebody was burning billions of tokens a day. I'm like, what is even going on? Like, what could you possibly be doing?
Yeah, what's the value to token burn ratio?
Yeah,
Is
totally.
like
What I do think is important, and what I'll share at Expel is like we believe that driving people along the maturity journey toward AI native is more important than clamping down on token spend right now. That's
yeah.
especially true because we happen to be in this narrow window of time where some of the tokens are still being subsidized with these premium plans. I think all of that is going away. So I think the pendulum's going to swing back. It's going to get more expensive. And then I think the open source models will catch up and then it'll swing back. And I think it will equalize over time. I'm optimistic about
And a
that.
question I have is like, do you always need the frontier model for the task at hand, or maybe you use like the model that's a year old and it's cheap and it's good enough, you know? But
Yeah.
yeah, all of this like model selection and cost and is going to all become a
Yeah.
new game that we have to capital allocate for. But
But when you think about like all the processes we've put in place on the people side, promotions and spot bonuses and all these things, the word that everybody uses is impact,
mhm.
right? That's what everybody wants to see. It's like, how did you affect the business? Did you save the business this much money? Did you like deliver a thing that customers are willing to pay for? Did you resolve a longstanding pain point across the whole org that saved a bunch of developer time? And all that I've ever cared about is that. I think like when anybody is in this sort of people side of things, that's what you really care about. And it's really hard to train people on like, yeah, I get it. You did all this stuff that was really hard and it proves that your technical prowess, but like from the business perspective, it kind of didn't matter. And that's like hard for people to hear. But it's like, good job, you burn all these tokens, but like why and who cares? So I think this token maxing thing is going to be a fad that like has a big burst, and I think it's going to die quickly because like especially when these like subsidized tokens get turned off, it's just like it's not the right metric. It's just
Yeah.
like the metrics have like
Yeah.
what you want to do in a company hasn't changed. You want to like make your customers happy. Like
Totally,
so like
totally.
do that.
But at the
Don't
same
worry
time,
about the
what I
token.
hear from you is like you're not trying to prematurely optimize cost either,
That's right.
because like you want people experimenting and learning the new game on the field, and then the cost management phase can come, in a subsequent chapter. I'm sure it will for a lot of us, but right now the focus isn't there. It's on value delivery and getting people to embrace this new way of working.
Yeah. I will like just put a fine point on what you just said, which is like if I were an IC right now, all I would be doing is upskilling. Like, I think
Hmm.
as an engineer, the only thing that matters right now is are you at a place where you can become AI native from a career perspective? You're toward the end of your career and you're ready to like call it in a year or two, maybe not. But for the rest of us, like I think the only thing that I think this is probably true for people leaders too, it just like looks a little different. But like I see engineers, it's like you should be learning how to, these are superpowers that we now have. The people who are gonna be the most valuable in the future version of the industry are the ones who have learned how to use these tools to their advantage. And the stuff that you said earlier about the sort of like people veering into each other's arena is like, is that a problem or is that because these roles are I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Cool. Well, we'll leave it there. Jeffrey, thanks so much for the time. This was a really fun conversation.
Super fun,
And
man. Have a great rest of your day, and
you too.
yeah, thanks for the time.